Welcome back, everyone, to the Party Talk podcast, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. And today, I'm super excited. We have my friend Caitlin Alfonso here on the call with us, and we're just going to chat about life, about work, about impact, and kind of what took her into this role and everything like that. But Caitlin, will you just go ahead and give us the good old intro?
Yes, hi. I'm so excited to be here. So, I have been in the social work field for over 10 years, and I've done some really awesome youth programming in different areas, including juvenile detention and parks and recreation. And currently, I've been in the public school setting now for about 4 school years. So that's where I'm at currently.
Wow. And what got you into this kind of work? Why did you decide to go into that?
Yeah, so I fell in love with working with teens very early on in my career. So I was still in college when I got offered the opportunity to go into just programming at the juvenile detention center, and I always knew I wanted to be in a helping profession. I grew up with a sister with disabilities, and so I just really knew that that was where I wanted to go. Um, and just support people and help them reach their potential. So I fell into social work with that mindset, and then really fell in love in particular with adolescents and youth. And so I started out in juvenile detention and really just met some amazing youth that had just incredible stories. And just from there, just really explored just working and building programs in particular that helped them again just overall reach their potential and follow their dreams in different areas. And so when I returned back to Arizona, the opportunity came to be at a high school setting, and I thought, well, that one I haven't actually been. I've worked with tons of high school students, but never with them day to day in the school setting. And so I just jumped on that opportunity when it came, and here we are.
Okay, cool. And I'm curious from a point of learning because you're just really smart and really thoughtful. So is there a yeah, is there a part when you think about mental health and you think about prevention and bringing out the best in people, is there a part in there that really sparks your interest and you love talking about and sharing about?
Oh, a part of mental health and youth prevention. I think it's really interesting for me. I think everything's connected. So I think we get into these conversations and dialogues, and it's, really, oh, it's this category and this category. And for me, I see everything as just flowing, from one thing into the next and back to the other. And it's very organic. And so what excites me about these conversations is that they're so multi-layered.
Cool. So what is, for example, I would agree with you 100%. And let's say someone says, no, they're not connected. What are you talking about, Caitlin? Uh, these are separate things. What would you say to that? Is there an example or something that you're like, hey, this is connected to this, is connected to this?
In general, I know this is a larger scale, but I think that we, when I talk with my students at my university, for example, and they're upcoming social workers, for a long time the dialogue was that there's policy social work and there's clinical social work, and when you're in clinical, you're in the ground, and that's where you really work with mental health. But we're seeing right now, in across the nation, different legislation being put. And so, when you look at it from that big scale, everything that's happening at the very top really does impact what's happening on the clinical level. And so you can't really say that they're separate anymore because each decision impacts the other. The clinical, data is supposed to be going and driving the policies, but if the policy doesn't consider the data, then they're making new legislations and policies that impact how our professionals are working in the field to support people.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And again, I would actually agree with you 100% because I think in our field, right, with prevention and social work and emotional health is that it's kind of like that is the outcome of a different problem or a separate problem. Like you said, they're all connected. So the foundation might be a trauma that happened or a relationship that is toxic. Maybe 5 years ago when I was doing this work, I would always talk with school counselors. Those are the people that wanted to work with me and bring me in for speaking engagements. And more recently, I've been noticing more titles of school social worker all around the nation, which is very good. That's a great thing to see. And I want to dive into your experience a little bit and ask you, is as far as the support or like the landscape on each area where you were a social worker, what was it like in those different areas? If you have an opinion on like the differences,
Yeah.
what it was like.
The interesting thing is, it's funny, I was reflecting on this not too long ago because I realized part of a common theme in my career path is I've kind of been the first social worker to enter into a lot of non-traditional settings. Um, so for instance, I worked in parks and recreation for a county in Florida. And so I did youth programming out there, and I was a social worker and in parks and recreation. Like, why? Like, that's the what, and so I'm building up this program to support, for teens across the county, and this internship program, and really doing that. And I realized, at that time, and this was in the 2000s, they didn't have a child abuse policy, and this was a parks and recreation center that had, the most children enrolled in after school care. And they're mandated reporters, but they technically still in the 2000s did not have, a policy for child abuse reporting. And so that was a really interesting thing for me to go in and be like, okay, I know I'm the only social worker, but really, like, y'all been working with kids for this long, like, why, and so it's kind of taking that step back. And so, then to come in to the school setting and, and come in at a time where, especially at the high school level, they've been at the elementary school levels, in my particular district for a while. But they haven't really been at the high school level. At one point in time, there might have been like a little bit of coverage, but for the majority of it, this role hasn't existed at the high school level. And so, coming in and really supporting people and understanding what social work is, how we can support in these different fields, and what exactly our skill set can step in and do to support our communities is really important. But that's definitely been a common thread in my personal career, is moving into these non-traditional roles and kind of making space for social workers, truly.
And can you talk a little bit about with your experience lately, what are students going through that you're seeing maybe this generation or these last couple of years? Is there any common themes of what the students are facing?
I would love to say that there's common themes, but it's everything. Like, life's been hard lately, like for so many people, for so many reasons. And I've realized, and again, I'm a big data person, so like I've always kind of just tracked numbers of how many, that's something that we do as well, but we track, just how many students we typically see in a day. And that number has climbed every single year. This year has not even ended, and I've already surpassed what the amount of students in actual crisis that I had last year. I almost hit that number in one semester. So, and in this semester alone, I had 100 students in crisis in my office in 20 days when we came back from Christmas. Yeah, it is a lot. So, it's
Wow.
diverse. It's everything.
Okay. That is like insane to say that you've surpassed the previous year in one semester and to hit 100 in 20 days. Did I hear that right? 100 students coming into your office in crisis in 20 days.
Yes. And that crisis can like literally range from, my family, I need a food bag, or, a basic need, with clothing or school supplies, all the way, to, we've lost our housing, or the police were at my house, where I need to, I was sexually assaulted, or whatever, the need is, my parent died, you know, we've lost a pet, like all these different types of things, whatever, whatever it is, crisis really is the perception of the person. So it's not for me to say, well, this isn't a true crisis, like this is lesser. If our emotions and and that's our realities, I'm in crisis, then we are in a state of crisis.
So how can you possibly serve that many students? Like what, how could you do that? Or what did you do? I'm so curious. How do you handle that?
It's the $1 million question, and I don't think that there's a good answer. So the ratios are still very unrealistic at most schools. I mean, when you've got one person to the whole student body, for me, that's over 2,000 students. The reality is I'm not supporting every single student. The reality is I may see one student that I typically only see students in crisis, maybe one time ever. And so that's a huge, I think, area that we need to have growth in. Is we have the numbers to say we're in this level of crisis. We need more support. It's just getting that the advocacy there to the funding, all the things that come with that, because it's truly not possible to serve students the way that they deserve to be. And it is one of the things that's very tough, to go. I knowing at the end of the day that you still saw, 7 to 10 kids, but there's still so many more out there. Or the next day, it's 7 to 10 different kids, different crisis, different day. And there's not a lot of ability to do follow up. And that's challenging because, if you have a student come in and say, I'm struggling with, substance use, you want to be able to get them resources and then follow up and say, how did that go? Have you been connected? And that follow-up bit is the part that often falls through the cracks. So the initial ability to help may be there. It's the follow-up that makes it even more challenging. And you're constantly trying to just sneak them in when, I think we might have a lull moment. Let me go to my list and see who I need to follow up with and who's that priority there to make sure that XYZ happens. But that is the big challenge.
Okay. Wow. I can imagine if I were in your shoes, yes, I would be asking for, hey, can I have budget for another person like myself on campus, maybe a part-time person to follow up and see if they need another appointment or a time to chat, or just to ask, hey, did you follow up with this resource, to remind the student or their parents, if you're allowed to do that, or anything. But that, like you said, that comes with, all right, well, now the school board or someone has to approve this and you have to get funding. And I imagine too that as more and more students come into your office and like you said, you're collecting data, there's maybe part of your mind to say, okay, we need these resources to deal with the crisis, and then we need these resources to pour into prevention to help before this gets out of hand for the rest of the student body. And that's, again, like the whole picture, like it's holistic health, it's holistic prevention and response.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. The prevention bit is definitely my passion. So, but realistically, that it's shifted very much into just constant crisis intervention. So at that point, we're looking at students already struggling or already something traumatic has happened or is in the works. Like we've missed that prevention window. And I think, we've created some spaces, my school in particular, like a mindfulness center and things like that was developed with very with a prevention specific lens. And we had a big vision for the space, and then COVID happened. And so, as the crisis levels went up, the ability to do prevention has definitely decreased. And we just don't have the personnel to be able to do it. And so, yes, absolutely. I think the number one thing that can really help with schools right now is to be able to get these mental health crises supported and families supported in this way. But the challenge is that it's already a new role. They've worked well enough without this role. There's all these different, arguments and different perspectives and things happening. that kind of gridlock the money and the ability to get that extra personnel, which is unfortunate. So
Okay. Well, I wanna end our time together to talk for, 5 or 6 minutes on some of the things that you are really proud of that you did, or ideas that you implemented that you're just like, oh man, that is so cool that we did that. Or just personal stories that make you hopeful and like, yeah, cool things. And that people might be able to steal from you and say, oh, I could do that.
Mhm. Yes. So I think, I mentioned our mindfulness center, and a lot of schools in particular have created beautiful, great spaces for that. And so even though they may not be, you know, being able to be utilized as much as I know many of us and, want them to be or in the capacity, like I'm still super excited to see that these spaces exist in schools and to know that that's one of the things that I was involved with as well. But my number one thing that I'm proud of with my school in particular is, um, a space that we developed that actually addresses the basic needs of a student and their family. So we got a grant to start a closet that has shoes, clothing, um, hygiene products, and school supplies. And it is my favorite place on campus. It's like an actual boutique. We created it with the idea that there was to be no shame involved. No matter what the circumstances were, like you are cared for, you deserve, nice, comfortable things. And so we made it into this beautiful boutique. And it's got a fitting room in there. Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
cool, right? And so we took over that, and it's just amazing space. But what makes it so awesome too, and I hope other people can implement this in their spaces as well. As it's multi-layered. So not only does it serve students who may be experiencing and families may be experiencing homelessness due to fires or domestic violence situations or losses of incomes or things like that. We also built in a factor for students to be able to volunteer in the space and get their hours. So COVID took away a lot of those opportunities for students to go off campus and get that volunteer time for applications and scholarships, things like that. So we wanted to bring that to be accessible back at our school. So our space is mostly run by youth volunteers and students at our school, which is really cool. In addition, we made sure that we brought in students that maybe don't get as many opportunities to participate. And so all of our clothing is actually processed. Once our student volunteers process everything, like what are we going to keep, what are we going to donate back out, which when we donate items that maybe don't fit so we go back through and we make it very specific to certain shelters in our community and things like that. So we go through donations a couple of times to make sure people are getting the things that are appropriate. But our life skills students, so students in our special ed department, actually come in and wash the clothes and practice folding them, bring them back up, and they make our space run and smoothly because we could not do it without them. And they come in and just bring everything back beautifully folded, and we just slip it right on the shelves and all these things. So our fashion design club has done things where they come in and change the mannequins because I have zero patience for those mannequins and their arms falling off. So they come in and take care of that for me and for us. And then we have our clubs. Our clubs they do donation drives for us. We have amazing community partners that come in and are really proud of our space. And so we have been able to do so much with that closet, and have been able to impact over 65 families this year through that. So it's really exciting. It's probably my favorite project that I've been able to be a part of and support at my particular school. And I just get so excited each time I even think about it and its impact. So I hope others can do it and know that it just brings so much joy and happiness in the middle of all the chaos and sometimes sad news, but it's awesome.
Wow. Honestly, I'm like a little teary. Just hearing you talk about that is the coolest thing. And I love how the students are involved in running the whole thing. from the washing of the clothes to running the center to choosing the different things to having food like clothes drives.
Mhm.
And it's just, yeah, what a good way to rally around your community and make students feel loved and cared for.
Yes.
Wow. And what I want to bring out too is it comes back to your point of it's linked. Like if a student comes to school without socks, or shoes, or they feel like I don't have what's necessary, is they're going to worry about that the entire day. They're not taking in information. They might not be learning at their highest capacity. And it's going to affect the school culture and your learning objectives as a teacher. And some of the schools will say like, oh, I don't have time for prevention. Like we've got to increase our literacy rate, or we've got to, decrease suicide rates.
Mhm.
And you're like, these things are absolutely connected by the safety of our students and how well they're provided for at home and at school. So, oh man, I'm so proud of you. This has been awesome, Caitlin. Thank you so much for doing the show with me. Before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to share, knowing that prevention professionals from across the U.S. are open to listen to this and they might hear you? Is there anything that you could say to them that might help them, or advice?
I know these are just tough times, and everyone's out there grinding, doing really good work, and just serving people in so many different beautiful ways. And that sometimes it just constantly with things the way they are right now, feeling like we're not hitting that bar sometimes, and doing enough, and that can be very challenging. So I don't have any way to fix that. It's something that I think there's days that I definitely have that feeling. But my big thing is always just we all just got to make space for that self-care, because that's just so critical, for mental health, for physical health. And so, I'm glad the conversations are kicking up around self-care more and people are embracing it more, because I just feel it's so critical in finding the things that just bring you joy so that you can refill your cups and continue to do the things that you love as well for others.
There you go. That's another episode of Party Talk, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. And Caitlin, Alfonso, thank you so much for being on. We'll see y'all next time on the Party Talk podcast.